For years, this was all just speculation, right? A ton of conspiracy theories. But now, the Jeffrey Epstein files are finally out in the open. The Department of Justice has started unsealing this massive trove of documents, and it's giving us a look inside a world that is frankly dark and incredibly powerful. So, what are we going to find now that the floodgates are open? Let's get into it.
And when I say massive, I am not kidding. We are talking about over 5.2 million files. I mean, try to wrap your head around that. It's just a mountain of data, holding everything from FBI reports and legal documents to private emails and financial records. The scale is just staggering.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? After all the hype, all the waiting, what's actually in there? What new, hard facts have come out of these millions of pages? Let's find out together.
Okay, so first things first, we gotta understand what these files even are, and why, after all this time, they're just coming out now. It's a story that's been caught up in legal battles for more than a decade.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective. It all kicks off with that super controversial plea deal Epstein got back in 2008. Then you fast forward to 2015, and a defamation lawsuit by survivor Virginia Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell really started to pry these documents loose. Of course, after Epstein's arrest and death in 2019, the pressure for transparency just exploded, leading to the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which is why we're seeing all of this now.
All right, now for the part that everyone's been talking about, the names. I mean, the sheer number of powerful people mentioned throughout these files, politicians, billionaires, celebrities, it's just wild.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's not just a list of names. The files actually break down how these people are connected. You've got Donald Trump and Bill Clinton showing up in flight logs and in social settings. You have Prince Andrew, who's linked through photos and direct emails. And then there are people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, whose names just surfaced in Epstein's own email chains.
So in one of the documents, a witness talks about being on a flight with Epstein that had to be diverted. And apparently, Epstein just casually mentioned he'd called Donald Trump to see if they could hang out at one of his casinos. Now, Trump's side of the story is that he had a falling out with Epstein years ago and, quote, wasn't a fan.
And then you've got former President Bill Clinton, whose name pops up a lot, especially in those flight logs. A spokesperson has been very clear that his travel was all for his foundation's work and has strongly denied he knew anything about Epstein's terrible crimes.
Okay, and this is so important to remember. Seriously, just because someone's name is in these documents, it absolutely does not mean they did anything wrong or even accused of anything. The files mention all kinds of people, witnesses, employees, people who just happened to be in the same room.
Okay, so moving past just the names, this is where we get into the digital breadcrumbs. The thousands of emails give us a wild look into his network, and they start to paint a picture of how he might have tried to keep his business world separate from, well, his other world.
I mean, look at this, an email from Richard Branson in 2013. The language here, as long as you bring your harem. It gives you a real sense of the creepy, casual vibe of the circles he was moving in. The tone is just so revealing.
And they were definitely trying to cover their tracks. Take this, for example. You've got emails from someone called the Invisible Man talking with Ghislaine Maxwell about travel and girls. And, well, what do you know? That exact email address shows up in Epstein's contact book right under Prince Andrew's name.
This right here might be the key to how he walled everything off. You see this web of corporations, all registered by his lawyer to one single address in New York. The theory is that this was the whole game plan. Use this corporate maze to separate the legitimate-looking business from the absolute horror of his criminal activities.
Okay, so we have the network of names, we have the digital trail. Let's tie it all back to what this was really all about, the criminal enterprise. So let's be super clear on what we're talking about here. Sex trafficking, it's not just moving people around. Legally, it's the act of recruiting or providing someone for a commercial sex act using force, fraud, or coercion. That's the core of the accusation.
And here's the alleged why behind it all. This quote from a legal doc is just chilling. It claims this wasn't just for Epstein himself. He was allegedly lending victims to powerful people to get business connections, political favor, and maybe, just maybe, to get blackmail material on them.
And pages like this one, this is the stuff the whole case is built on. You're looking at a legal filing from 2016. It's talking about testimony from people who worked for him, people who saw the abuse with their own eyes. It's a look at the evidence they were putting together.
But you know, as much as these files revealed, the way they've been released has been messy. It's raised a ton of new questions about what real justice looks like here.
Yeah, the redactions are a huge deal. Lawyers for the survivors are calling the process haphazard.
A name will be blacked out on one page, and then boom, it's right there in the open on another. You can imagine how confusing and re-traumatizing that must be.
And maybe the biggest bombshell of all is that this was never just about Epstein. Right after his arrest in 2019, the FBI had a list of 10 alleged co-conspirators. We know from emails that at least 6 of them got hit with subpoenas all over the country. But what about the other 4? Including this mysterious wealthy businessman in Ohio? We just don't know.
So, where does that leave us? We've got millions of pages, thousands of headlines, but do we actually have transparency? Or are we just staring at an even bigger, more complicated puzzle? It feels like for every answer we get, we find 10 more questions buried deep in the data. This has been another Way to Real Disaster.